Hi everyone. In this lesson we're going to show you basically the very essentials you need to communicate to a SQLite database using Java. Again, we're going to show you a very minimal setup to actually communicate to this database. And in future lessons we'll show you how to make this code much better and to do so a bit easier. Again, we're going to be using the ELS workshop dynamic web project that we created in the last video. And so to demonstrate how to communicate to a SQLite database, I'm not even going to use a servlet or anything like that. I'm just going to click this package, and I'm just going to make a new class. And I'm just going to make a new main method. I'm going to call it hello databases. And the purpose of this class is it's just going to have a main method. And again, we're going to show you all the minimal things you would need to communicate with this database that's stored here in this database folder. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've made a class called hello databases with a main method inside. Now, to run this, what you would do is you would right-click and you would do run as. You wouldn't click run on server. It's not a servlet. There's no server code here. You click run as Java application, and so that will run your code for you. Okay. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to load the database drivers into our Java class here. Now, again, we had downloaded the driver in the previous video. If you expand libraries and then Maven dependencies, you'll see the SQLite JDBC driver. So that is putting the SQLite drivers into our project. However, we do need to actually load those dynamically, and it's a bit goofy. Again, there's no need to actually memorize this. It's all on E360. But you would type in class .forName. And in forName, you're going to pass in the name of the driver as a string. Again, this is really goofy. And so this line of code does expect, I'm just going to add a quick throws declaration, the class not found exception. And in this string, I'm going to type in the name of the driver, which is going to be org.SQLite.jdbc. And capitalized JDBC does matter. You're going to want to type it in just like this. Now again, this is step one. This loads the database drivers dynamically. Again, this line of code does throw a class not found exception, so you need to handle that either in a throws declaration in the main method or a try catch block. So again, if you had a different driver, this I would expect to be called something different. So really, that's the first step, loading the drivers dynamically. First step, you always do that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually connect to that database that we had created here in this databases folder. To do that, we're going to create a connection object. I'm going to name it connection, and that guy is going to hold that database connection. I can see I'm getting a bit of a red error here. We're going to go ahead and import the java.sql library, and I'm going to change this .connection to a star. So I'm going to bring in that entire library. I'm going to bring in everything. And we're going to set this connection equal to a new connection that we're going to make. And so this connection we're going to make, again, there's no reason to have this memorized, but you're going to use the driver manager to get a connection. You're not going to call new here. You're going to go ahead and you're going to use this driver manager to get a connection for us. Again, we don't want to get that connection. We're going to have the driver manager do this for us. Now, in get connection, the get connection method expects us to pass in a connection string that will allow us to connect to this database. Again, I'm not going to cover too much of what connection strings are you can go into, and it's expected that you'll go into the lesson for this week, and I've got a whole little section on connection strings and connectionstrings.com, which goes into detail about how to actually make this connection string. Now, I do expect this connection string to get quite long, and so I do need to add a SQL exception. I'm going to add that to the throws declaration here to get rid of the angry red stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bump this guy down a line because again, this connection string can get quite long. Again, there's no need to actually memorize a connection string. Again, you can find help on that on E360. The connection string we're going to author, it's always going to have JDBC colon for the JDBC API. But then the database, the relational database tool that we're using, which is going to be SQLite colon. So your connection string is always going to have this at front, but then we do need the path to the database. And so this could be a relative path or whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this and I'm going to go properties. I'm going to copy this database location, and I'm just going to cancel this out, and I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to go ahead and hide these windows here so you can see the connection string. Now this is the full path, the absolute path to that database. Now I'm going to quickly run this code very quickly, and what I'm doing by quickly running that code is I was hoping to see any exceptions that might have been thrown here. And again, I'm not seeing any exceptions that were thrown. So I'm going to assume that this connection is good. So again, this driver manager is going to get this SQLite connection for us using the getConnectionString method. We're going to pass in a connection string. And that connection string specifies the JDBC API, the SQLite relational database, and again, the path to that database. And so we'll look at, potentially look at making this not an absolute path. Again, if you were to copy and paste this project somewhere else, this absolute path wouldn't work. So again, this is going to get a connection to the elves database using the database manager. And that will create a connection for us. So now that connection is open, and we can use that connection to actually write our SQL code. Now, to actually build a statement, an SQL statement, we're actually going to use the connection object we created above. And so we're going to create a SQL statement that we would transmit to our SQLite database. And then execute that statement, that query or that update. So this is a statement object. I'm going to go ahead and call it statement. And we're going to set that equal to connection dot connection dot, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new statement. Okay. And this creates, again, a statement that we can actually use. Now, I need to write some actual SQL code, again, to write SQL code in a Java project. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new string called SQL. And in this string, we're going to write SQL query code, just like you would in Database 1. So I'm going to say select star or select all from elves. And again, I need to put a semicolon here inside the string to end the SQL statement, but then I also need a semicolon here to terminate the Java statement. So again, don't forget this SQL semicolon here. It's really easy to do. I do it all the time. And I'm going to add a quick comment. So we're going to make a SQL statement that will run our SQL code. Okay. And then then step 4, I'm going to quickly say to author some SQL query to run against the ELS database. Okay. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually pass that SQL in this Java string to that database. I'm going to run that query using this statement. Now I believe that is going to be statement.execute query, and I'm going to pass in this SQL Java string that I created up here. Okay, so again, on step 5, we're going to use the statement to execute some SQL. Now, I should make a quick note. If you are going to execute a query, that is, if the database is expected to return something, like we're expecting here with select return something, you need to use execute query. However, if your SQL code is not returning anything, you're not querying anything, you would need to use statement.execute update right here instead. And so this would be used to update the database, so to add records or to drop records or to drop databases or whatever. So again, I'm going to add a quick note here. I'm going to say use execute query when you're expecting the database to return some results. And then again, you would use execute update when you're not expecting the database to return results. Again, this is expected to return records from the ELS database. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. Again, you don't need to use that. Now, when we execute our query, it's going to return the results as what's known as a result set. So again, this execute query is going to return a result set. And you can see in the documentation it is indeed return a result set. So I'm going to assign whatever this query returns into a result set object. I'm just going to name it result set, like so. Oops, typo. So I'm also going to add a quick note that says this line will store the results of the query into a result set object. Okay. So I'm going to quickly run this code. Again, I'm just quickly checking for any exceptions or explosions. I don't see any. That's a good thing. So now our results from our database, from our query, are stored into this result set object. And so to get those out, that data out, we're going to use a loop. And we're going to loop through each record in that result set. And so I'm going to say while result set.next. Yeah, I believe it's has next. Oh no, it doesn't have a has next function. My mistake. It is next. We're going to do result set next, and so we're going to loop through each record in the result set using the next function. Now, result set has a lot of different methods. Again, if I do result set dot dot and look at the Explorer, there's a ton of different methods here that we could use to access those records. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some variables that are going to hold the name of the elves in my workshop. So I'm going to make a variable called integer ID. And we're going to set that equal to integer.minValue. And we're going to make a string to hold the elf's first name. We'll set that equal to the empty string, and then a string last name to hold the elf's last name. And then I think we added a couple weird ones. We added another age, and so we'll say age is equal to integer min value. And then we added a numeric or a floating point number for the elf's weight, because why not? And we'll say double.min value. Again, this will be some garbage values. Now what we can do is we can actually access the different columns in that record set. So what I can do is I can do ID, and we can do result set.getInt. So getInt will return a given column index as an integer in this case. The ID column is stored in 1. Now, it's not 0. 0 is bad. Don't use 0. But the first column has the ID. Now, likewise, to get the first name into Java, we would do first name equals result set.get and get string. And again, from the previous video, the second column had the elf's first name. And likewise, the third column had the elf's last name. The age was stored in the fourth column. And finally, the weight of the elf was stored in the fifth column. Result set dot get double. So again, what we're doing is we're going to basically loop over each record in the result set, and then we're going to basically parse out each value in the record, and we're going to do so by column. And again, the getInt, getString, getDouble, getFloat all expect the column number. So again, this will extract the data out of that. Now, to prove that this is running, what I'm going to do is quick system.out.println. And I'm going to quickly print out the first name of each elf, and we'll just see if that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and click play. And you can see I'm printing out the names of our elves, Steve, John, and Mary. So this shows you how to now output that with system.out. Now you can imagine if we had a Java bean for elves, which we'll do in the future video, this is how we would make that Java bean. This is how we would get the data out, and this is how we could do it here. But again, that's it. That's all you need to basically talk to a SQLite database. Again, you need to load the driver, make a connection with a long connection string. Again, it's just the JDBC with SQLite. The path to that SQLite database. You'll then create a statement. You'll write some and author some SQL code. And then you will pass that SQL code that you wrote into an execute query method, which will return a result set. Again, if the SQL code doesn't return anything, you're going to run execute update, which there is no result set, so it's even easier. Then what you can do is you can make some values, and you can pull out those values from that result set using getInt and then the column number. And again, you can use a quick while loop like this, while result set.next, to loop over each of those records. So again, that's how you can access a SQLite database. And so in future videos, we're going to show you how to do so not only within a dynamic website, but also how to do that a bit better using a database access object, and then of course parameterized statement. So again, thanks for watching.